Your relationship with alcohol may be a complicated one. And in today's episode, my guests and I talk about how to drop this black or white thinking when it comes to alcohol and help you create a relationship with alcohol that works for you. Hey ladies, it's Amanda. Welcome to the Feel Amazing Naked podcast. This is a show where we dig deep, get honest, and talk about all the unsexy steps it takes to meet your goals. Whether you want to get fit, eat healthier, make more money, start a business, or any other results you desire in your life. Most of all, this podcast is for women who are ready to feel amazing naked on the outside and the inside. So ladies, time to take it off. One of the greatest joys I have as a coach is helping another woman take a vision she has and turn it into a profitable reality, and take this passion and this love for doing some sort of work in the world and be able to create financial freedom, time freedom, and bring to her family a new sense of herself because of this thing that she built from her bare hands. I want to help you do that too. I've opened up a few one-to-one coaching spots to help you grow your business, to begin your business in the online space. So if you're someone who's been thinking about this idea, or you're already somebody that maybe has started and is just kind of hitting roadblocks and isn't sure of the next best steps to take, where do I start? How do I keep this going to create a steady stream of income? Then I want to help guide you to that next level. The way we can do that is hopping on the phone and just making sure I kind of see your vision, feel confident about your vision, that I can support you in that vision. And then together we can help you move towards it. So to chat, visit feelamazingnaked.com/let's chat, LETSCHAT, and we can hop on the phone and learn more about one another. Or feel free to send me a message on Instagram and we will connect and move from there. Welcome, ladies, to the Feel Amazing Naked podcast. I'm really excited about today's conversation because we're going to talk about alcohol. We're going to talk about drinking, how it looks in your life, how you want it to look in your life. And today's guest is the lovely Rachel Hart. So thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I discovered your work via the Life Coach School. I think you were offering kind of a special, unique training through the Life Coach School. And I jumped on because truthfully, alcohol comes out a lot in my coaching, which is not an area of expertise for me necessarily. But this notion of buffering with alcohol is something that I think when we start to do like the self work on us, we become more self-aware that it's not necessarily something that we feel aware of or in control of, and we want it to look different. And so I'm excited to talk more about that today. But I'm curious if you could share a little backstory of like what led you to these discussions and kind of that look at yourself and your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a really long time, my relationship with alcohol was, oh, this is how I access the fun, free, wild version of myself, which was really, it was like a part of me that I wanted to access quite a bit, but really didn't know how, was really stuck in like doing everything perfect and following the rules and having a lot of chatter, a lot of mind chatter about how I was awkward or I wasn't measuring up, or I mean, it really was to me, it felt like when I started drinking, I was in my first year of college and I was like, oh, like this is the thing. Like this is how I find this version of myself that I'm really longing to be. I guess I'll describe it like a little bit like it felt like a crutch. Like I felt like if I didn't have it in social situations, it was like, well, this is weird and awkward. And why am I even here? And, how am I even supposed to feel comfortable? So there was a little bit of that. And then there was also the fact that my drinking was really unpredictable. And so, for a lot of college in my early 20s, it was very socially acceptable to go out and get drunk and be sloppy. And that was funny. And then as I started, advancing in my career, I didn't like sometimes that it was a little unpredictable for me. Like, is tonight going to be an okay night, or is tonight going to be like 2 a.m. at the falafel truck? Like, which one is going to happen? And so I didn't really understand kind of what was going on. And I felt very torn for a long time between feeling like this makes everything better. This makes me better. This makes situations more fun. This makes, like the daily grind. It's something like fancy and sophisticated and fun to look forward to. And then also this piece of me that didn't really even like acknowledging that my drinking could be really unpredictable. I felt like I had a lot of desire. I felt like other people around me had like this magical off switch in their brain that maybe like mine was either missing or just didn't work all the time. And I felt very alone and very confused because everything out there that really talks about why people struggle with drinking, the vast majority really kind of puts people into the category of like, you're a normal drinker and you can control yourself, or you're an alcoholic and alcohol makes you powerless and you have a disease. I didn't feel like I was either. And I think that that kind of is how I ended up on this journey of kind of self-discovery for me, and then becoming a coach, and then really wanting to bring this work to more people, because I realized that like, while these categories are so neat and tidy to say like, okay, so which one are you? Are you a normal drinker? Are you an alcoholic? This black and white thinking is really problematic, and it leaves a lot of people kind of out in the cold feeling like, okay, well, what about me? I feel like I don't fit anywhere. There's no resources for me. I can't really explain kind of why I have the relationship I do, or why it's sometimes a struggle to say no, why my drinking is unpredictable. And so that's really kind of how I ended up doing the work that I do today.
Yeah. I feel like so many women relate to that. I just like, I'm like, oh yeah, she just described myself. You were going to it. But I think the notion too, like I didn't have alcohol as like, I hear stories too of high school drinking and stuff. That was not who I was. Quite honestly, I was like deathly afraid of getting in trouble for even engaging in it. And so then it was like, oh, I hit 21 and I gave myself full permission.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's socially acceptable. Okay. Yeah. And so then same thing, it was like this version of like, yeah, it was escaping of like this freer, what felt to be perceived fun and funny version that would just get totally tanked, sometimes on the weekend. And so I very much relate to that story. I obviously, in preparation for the show, I hopped into your page and I just love like the opening line of the copy on your site too, is something that we talk about in our world too, with regard to different things, is alcohol isn't good or bad and drinking isn't right or wrong. All that matters is how do you like your relationship with it? And just those statements, I think, is like game changer. When I started, in LCS and really evaluating not just my relationship with alcohol, but my relationship with everything, was like, how do I want it to look? It's okay. Yeah. It's right for me. So can you just talk to that a little bit? And how do we even discover what we want that relationship to look like?
Well, it's funny because I think that black and white thinking that happens when we kind of label different types of drinkers, it happens also with alcohol. And so I noticed, in my own experience and my own journey, that it was like, alcohol is amazing and it's the best thing ever. And it makes everything more fun and it makes me better. Or when I felt like, oh my God, I got to rein this in and maybe I need to take a break. And, then I would like this pendulum would swing all the way to the other side, which is like, but it's really bad for you and it's bad for my health. And there's a lot of messaging out there that really is trying to kind of demonize alcohol and convince people that it's really bad for you. And, basically you shouldn't want it. And I tried that as well. And the problem was I felt like that just even made my kind of shame and self-recrimination that much more intense, because then I was like, wait, this isn't good for you. Right. So like once I started going down that path of like, it's bad and it's hurting me and it's harming me. And it's like, you'll see a lot kind of this language of like, it's a poison or it's a toxin. Then I would wake up, after a night of way too many with the additional shame of like, oh, and I should know better, right? Like I should know that this is bad for my health. And so I think a lot of times people feel like if they're going to change a habit or their relationship with something, that demonizing is the way to go, that they have to convince themselves that they don't really want it, that it's actually really bad for them. But what it creates is a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? So you have that part of you that really actually still desires it, and the part of you that thinks like you shouldn't desire it and you should know better. And for me, it was just like incredibly powerful to see like, you know what? It's really neither. Like, alcohol has been around since the beginning of time, right? I mean, it's been around since before humans. Things can grow and they can decompose and they can ferment, right? And like that was happening. And at some point, like 5,000 years ago, humans figured out how to harness that process and make fermented beverages. But the idea of like moralizing and making it good or bad, right or wrong, I think really disconnects you with like, but how do I actually feel? Instead of trying to label it as one or the other, or trying to figure out like, how much should I drink? Like I talk about this a lot with guidelines, and people are like, well, but if, my doctor says this number of drinks is a safe amount. And my point is always, that's still disconnecting you from your actual experience drinking, because one glass of wine or two glasses of wine can feel totally different depending on how much sleep you got, how much stress is in your life, what you had to eat that day, where you are in your cycle, like so many things. And so what I'm always asking people to do is just reconnect with like, how does it feel for me? What is the relationship that I want to have? Do I like the results that I'm getting? And can I look at all of that without this kind of black and white, good or bad, right or wrong, it's the best thing ever, or it's like a scourge on mankind?
Yeah. And I think we can like insert alcohol with other things. Like, what do you want your relationship with food to look
Totally.
like? Practices around good or bad thinking are what creates so much drama around food, right? And just enjoying food versus not enjoying food. I mean, we could insert sex in there. We could insert work, right?
Yeah.
We could insert Netflix. We can insert all the things. But I think that question is just, for me, it changed my life, is what do I want it to look like?
Yeah.
Not what does Susie down the street do that works for her? And what does, like, in my house, my husband, like, what works for him? Honestly, what the relationship my husband has with alcohol is entirely different than mine, and it works for him and this works for me. And we've come to this place where we're like, cool, that's her relationship and this is my relationship. And I think that too, like, to add to your point, is from some perspective, like, not drinking is easier on the surface, right? When we're talking about like this dichotomy of yes or no, initially it feels like, oh, I'm just going to quit. That's easy. But the unconscious mind of any of these things is like, if you say not, what do we want? We want the thing.
Right.
And that
right.
thing grows, and it's like this big stack of eyeballs staring back at you. So I'm curious if you could like offer, why do you feel like we have an affinity for the not? Like, why is it just easier to default to that side of thinking?
Well, I think that there's a couple things happening there. One is this idea that, oh, alcohol is the problem. And now I'm not saying that you're the problem, but when we think like, oh, alcohol is the thing that's creating my desire, alcohol is the thing that is like creating the temptation inside of me, then our knee jerk is often like, oh, I need to remove alcohol from my life. And of course we do this with food as well, right? It's just like, oh, well, chocolate is the problem. So let's just like get rid of all the junk food and get rid of all the chocolate and like remove that. And then it's going to be easier. So partly that starts from this belief that our desire is created and temptation is created outside of us externally. So that's like a big thing that I work on with people. I think the other thing is that no one ever teaches us what to do with urges or what to do with cravings. And so, I got no guidance on this growing up. And the relationship that I developed with alcohol, I realized much later, looked actually underneath very similar to the relationship that I had with food. And so for me, it was like an urge or a craving was an emergency. I was like, oh, I have to have this thing right now. Like I want what I want when I want it. And if I don't have it, it feels terrible. And I hate denying myself. I also had a lot of story around like, I do everything in my life so right. And I follow all the rules and I'm always making sure that like everybody's needs are met. And so there was also this like really deep unconscious story about like, well, I don't want to deny myself. Like I'm denying myself all day long. And so that was there. And I had no idea how to deal with my urges. And then I think we just don't understand the power of language. And so a lot of people, when they start working with me, I'll be with them on coaching calls and they'll say, I know I'm like not allowed to drink. And I'm always like, whoa, whoa, whoa. let's like slow your roll for a second and really understand like what happens when you tell yourself you can't drink or you're not allowed to drink or you shouldn't drink. Like what actually is the emotional experience that is created for you? And what a lot of people discover, this can happen around alcohol. It can happen around food. It can really happen around any desire. When we tell ourselves that we're not allowed or can't be trusted or can't have something, we end up creating this cycle of feeling disempowered and then wanting to prove that we have power by then rebelling, and having the very thing that we told ourselves we couldn't have. I don't know. It's like we become kind of the prisoner and the warden, it's like we built the prison saying that we can't have it, right? And trying to like enforce it. And then, but all the prisoner wants to do is break out and have their freedom back. And so, really paying attention to the power of language and the power of your words. And like, is that actually even true? Right? Is it actually even true? Or are you telling yourself that as a way to try to, keep yourself in line?
Yeah. I love even the notion around, okay, so now what, right? We're self-aware that maybe the relationship with alcohol is not one that we love and we want to change it. I think even the messaging, what I really love about what you say versus some others too, is a lot of the messaging is stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I feel like from what I've grown to know about you is like, pause, just reflect, like take a break, just like do some digging around, like go a little bit self-inquiry, like get curious about yourself, your decisions, your behaviors. And then after you've collected the data, then make a decision of what you desire it to look like next for yourself. And then guess what? The same decisions that you make now don't have to be necessarily the same decisions a year from now, right? There's an evolution there.
Yeah. I think it was very intimidating for me for a long time. Again, because we have this black and white thinking that it was like, listen, if you can't control yourself, your drinking is really unpredictable sometimes, then you just need to abstain for the rest of your life. And that was just like, I remember thinking like, but what, I don't know what I want to do when I'm 80. Like it was so overwhelming for me to be like, wait, I have to like make this decision for the rest of my life. And also sometimes I would swear alcohol off, right? Like sometimes I would wake up and I would be like, oh God, never again. That was awful. I'm never going to do that. And then of course, maybe it was like a day or a weekend, or sometimes it was even like, 6 months would pass. And then I was just like, ugh, but like, I feel like I'm missing out and I'm not having as much fun. And there were it felt like there was kind of a hole in my life in a way. And so, yeah, for me, I think just like, let's just take a pause. Like, what if you just take 30 days and not only are you taking a break from drinking, but you're using that break as a tool to really understand how your mind works and understand your current relationship and understand how alcohol is helping you, right? A lot of times I ask people that question and they think it's a trick question. Like, oh, I know it's not helping me. And it's like, no, it is. Like there is an upside to drinking. And that upside is really important that you know what it is and you acknowledge it. Because if you try to actually change the habit by just telling yourself it's bad and it's good to say no, you're not actually going to create permanent change because you're not doing the like deepest level of work when it comes to changing a habit from the inside out. Like you have to understand what the upsides are so you can start to learn like, oh, so do you want to just feel like you can cut loose sometimes and not worry about what people think? Do you want to figure out a way to stop your chatter in your mind at the end of the day, or feel really confident going out, or feel like intimacy is easy with your partner? Like there's understanding that question. How is it helping you is so important. And like, that's part of the power of just taking a pause and really examining what the relationship is like. I think most people, if they do dry January, it's often a lot of times just about counting days. Yeah. And, you can get some insight about like, oh, this is how my body feels, especially if you're like a regular drinker. You can get some insight, but it's really not going to show you how the habit is working.
Yeah, it's so powerful. The reflection, like just pause, collect the data.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I see come up for a lot of our listeners, we have a mixed group. There's a lot of entrepreneurs listening. There's a lot of working parents. And it's like, it's been a long day, right? And that like immediate next step is I'm going to have a cocktail. And I don't know about you. I find with my entrepreneurial clients and even in the entrepreneurial space, it's even more heavily weighted. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's just data from my filter or what. Like, what do you say to that? Or what, for a woman that sees it as a problem, she's just feeling it's like consistently the habit, as you mentioned, or consistently the go-to. What's a starting point there? Where would you suggest to begin to be curious?
Yeah. I mean, the very first thing I would say, I do want to say that I also see that, especially with a lot of people who work from home and a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think it's because we're not taught how to have really good boundaries between this is when I'm working and this is when I'm not working. And so if you're leaving the house and you're going to an office, it's kind of like a built-in boundary. Now, of course, work can still infiltrate into your personal life, but I think that it becomes even more problematic at home when it's like, oh God, but like, there's so much I didn't get done and there's so many things I could be doing. And work is just like, your laptop, right? Or work is just like for me, it's like I go up to my office. And so that's one thing. I think what we end up doing unconsciously is pouring a drink to try to set a boundary, right? Like that's kind of like, okay, the day is done because I poured the drink. So now I'm off the clock. And so just understanding, like just being curious about what does that drink symbolize for you? So before you're even trying to change anything, just asking yourself, is it a sign that like you're off the clock, that you don't have to do any more work? Sometimes I'll work with people and they'll say, actually, it's my way to kind of keep pushing through. Like I want to stop working, but I feel like I can't. But if I give myself that reward, it's like a little boost of energy. It's a little dopamine for my brain. So the answer is always going to vary, but I think just being curious about like, okay, what is this symbolizing for me right now? Because that's going to give you a lot of insight into the current relationship that you have. And the next thing after you have done that is really that ability to just check in with yourself at the end of the day and just ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Right. So often that urge for a drink or the urge to like go eat something or, like that kind of like compelling, strong urge where we're like, okay, like I'm done. Like, where's my reward? If you just kind of pull back and really check in and just say, how am I feeling? What was the emotion that was hanging out with me today? What was the emotion that was fueling me? And again, so much of this work is not about, okay, so like you need to switch in the non-alcoholic cocktails or you need to like go for a walk. Like it's not necessarily even about starting with, you have to stop drinking or you have to do a replacement or you have to build in like different kinds of self-care. It's just starting from that place of curiosity, right? What is this symbolizing for me? What emotion was primarily fueling me through the day? That's going to give you a lot of insight into why you may be ending the day with like, okay, so like time to open the, rosé, like let's have my reward now that I made it through.
Yeah. I had this pivotal moment happen to me a couple of years ago with just like a group of friends that socially drinking was like the thing, right? It was just
Mm-hmm.
like this group of friends more than any others. And there was like an event or something, a birthday party, and I just wasn't feeling well a few days prior. I'm pretty in tune with my body. I'm easily like able to, pass on things that don't make me feel awesome. But this particular night, I was a hard no. I was like, I really am just going to stick to water. It wasn't. And so the night proceeded and I was the only one not drinking. And it was like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. It was very transformative. Like I'm talking about it. I'm getting an internal representation right now of the picture, the restaurant, everything. And it was almost like the world was happening around me. And I was watching
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like I was like a character in a movie watching all of this stuff happen and all of this. And I had this epiphany for myself of like, what do you want like your experience in social situations to be driven by moving forward? And it was that moment. And I don't want to say that I identify with much of what you said. And also as an adult and probably since having children, I crave some chocolate. Chocolate's
Yeah.
where my work has really been, was in the food front, less alcohol. But there's been that moment in particular was really instrumental for me to really start asking deeper questions. It didn't have to be black or white. I didn't have to say no or yes. I can have it or I can't. More so it was like, how do I want to show up? And I was realizing that, as you said, like the fun Amanda comes out with that. And I want to be fun Amanda all the time. Or when I desire to be sans, a beverage, an adult beverage if needed. And So anyway, so just like that was really transformative for me.
Yeah. And I think it's like, so often I was just coaching on this today and I was saying, so often we focus on just like, okay, so did I drink or did I not drink? And I was working with a woman who was saying it had been a while since she'd gone out because of COVID and she went to dinner and the theater with her friends. And normally she would definitely be drinking and they were all drinking. And so, she said, okay, I'm not drinking. I'm going to be the designated driver. And then she talked about how that was fine. And then she got home and immediately had this like intense urge to drink. And when we were kind of looking, examining and unpacking what was happening, it was like, yeah, because when you're telling yourself, okay, so I can't drink because I'm the designated driver, what feeling did that create for you? And she was like, oh, I mean, I felt very responsible. And I was like, well, is that how you wanted to feel? Like, you haven't seen your friends and you're going to the theater and you're going to dinner and like, is that the feeling you wanted? And she was like, no, I wanted to feel happy and connected and engaged. And so it's like, it gave her the quote unquote, like right action in the moment. She didn't drink, but it wasn't the experience she wanted. And then of course, because she was just like, oh, I'm just being responsible. Then she came home and, it was like, I've been so good. I was responsible. Where's my reward? Yeah. And so it really is, I think, stepping back and having that conversation with yourself of like, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up and what do I want this experience to be like? And recognizing that you may have unconsciously learned to outsource a lot of that to the drink in your hand. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It's really kind of how we're socialized in many ways. And so it's kind of like taking back that power for yourself and just realizing like, it doesn't have to be about, do I drink or do I not drink? Am I a drinker or am I sober? Like, you don't even have to go there. It's just looking at your relationship with alcohol is asking you to have like greater intimacy with yourself and what you want and what you truly desire and who you want to be. And it's not about, and then I have to never drink again. And I think that like when people start to understand it that way, it just feels so much more empowering and so much more they can start to see, oh, the habit is actually trying to show me what I'm deeply desiring in life and don't know how to give myself.
So good. Like what a great way to bring it full circle. And I think that something that comes across and hearing you speak and through your work too is I think sometimes we are just looking for permission from someone else to not have to be in this like duality of this or that. And when we can hear and see that other women are thriving and like, this is kind of simple, but it's not easy, right? Simple is not easy. And I think that's like sometimes the conflict there in our minds is that self-discovery and asking these hard questions of ourselves is not easy, but it's kind of like the way of sustainability and creating these relationships with things, people, in your life that are truly going to last. And something I hear often too is I'll just drink on the weekends. I'm only going to drink on the weekends. I'm going to have 2 on the weekends. And what happens if you get there and you don't want any, or you want 3? Like, how does that, so those are, I think, again, it gives you that permission to explore on a day by day basis or, however, teaching wise, I'm not sure, exactly your steps, but I think that really comes up from hearing from you is just that permission piece.
Yeah. And just really having a different conversation of like, how do I actually want to feel on the weekends? And why don't I feel that way without a drink? Yeah. Just like I always say that like, if you can bring curiosity to your relationship with alcohol and your, experience of urges, if you can just bring curiosity, like that to me is the number one tool because it's going to help you just look at what's happening without the judgment and right or wrong and, wanting to do it perfectly and just really start to see like, oh, this is the relationship that I have. And maybe it's not the one that I want. So how am I going to create something different?
Yeah. Amazing. You've given so many nuggets. Thank you so much for sharing all your perspective. One of the things I love to end is just a culminating fun question. As you know, the show title is Feel Amazing Naked. And I'm curious, like, what does that mean to you? What makes you feel amazing naked?
I mean, I will tell you that the work that I did to transform my relationship with alcohol was really how I learned to feel amazing naked because I was so reliant on like, if we're going to take my clothes off with someone, I'm going to have a buzz, right? And so it really like that in and of itself was so transformative for me to be like, oh, I can actually like feel this way. And I don't need a buzz. I don't need this, to feel really confident in my skin like that. Yeah, I think there's kind of nothing more powerful than just knowing like you can just show up and feel that way and not need kind of anything helping you along.
Yeah, as you are. Very awesome. So would you take a couple minutes and tell us where we can connect with you more to learn more about your work? I know you have a podcast. Tell us more about you and where the girls can find you.
Yes. So I have a weekly podcast called Take a Break from Drinking. It comes out every Tuesday. If people really want to dive into my approach and my work, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Why Can't I Drink Like Everyone Else? Which was a question that I really used to spin on for so long because I really did believe in this kind of black and white thinking. And then the work that I do with both men and women is inside my Take a Break membership. And it is a space for people to really start with that 30-day challenge and take a pause and then really figure out, okay, so what is the relationship that I want after I've gathered all this data? What's that going to look like? How am I going to achieve that? And do it in a space that's not kind of, wink, wink, it's really better not to drink, or wink, wink, you should really only have this much, but really create this kind of judgment-free space for people who, some people want to drink less in a sitting. Others want to drink less frequently. Some people don't know what they want, but they know something needs to change. And other people are like, yeah, I think I've had enough. Like, I think I'm kind of excited to see what life might be like alcohol free, and just letting you, find that path for yourself.
Awesome. And they can find all the information on your website?
Yes, rachelhart.com.
Perfect. Well, I'm honored. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know that this is going to be a powerful episode for so many. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And if you love this episode, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast on whatever favorite podcasting app you have. That way you will be sure to get the newest episodes delivered to you for free as soon as they come out.